What's up, guys? Another win last night with Mercer in college basketball, being really picky. They were able to stay within that number. It was pretty much a wire-to-wire cover, I think, even though they were losing by about 10 for the whole game. It was still good enough to cover the 14 and a half or whatever. So that one got there. Didn't expect like a money line sprinkle to cash or anything like that, even though I did have a little bit on there because it has happened. It happened with St. Joe's a little bit earlier in the season. So well, we keep winning. I've lost track of like how many. I don't know what I'm even up to, man. Like 17 of the last 23 days have been wins, something in that ballpark. I don't know what it is, but looking at today, we got a lot of sports in play. I'm being pretty selective again, being picky. I know you guys yesterday had talked about you guys liked those home underdogs with Northwestern, and they upset Purdue, which is crazy. You liked Xavier, I think, against Houston as well, and they got within the number as well. They played pretty well in that one. They covered against Houston, so I did agree with those, but they just weren't spots that I wanted to put my money on. Like, I didn't think the situations were that strong, but the Northwestern one especially did look like a trap. Like, it looked way too easy to take Purdue there. I'll mention there's at least one game that very much looks like it's a trap today, and I was close to playing it. I'm kind of still tempted to do it, but I will talk about that in a second. In college basketball, college football, you can go watch my videos if you want the more detailed analysis, but I do have two plays on Oklahoma State plus 15, which that line is still out there. I think you can get 15 and a halves out there too, but there's not much of a difference between those two numbers. That looks good to me with Texas having 66% of tickets and 64% of the cash. So that's the way the market has evolved in that one. It looks like Texas is the public team with a little bit less of the cash on them. So I'm on Oklahoma State. I gave the reasoning on that one in my video. I think it's a bad spot for Texas, mostly because I think they know that they can't actually make the playoff. So that is the situation there. And I have Iowa. I got plus 24. I was able to get the best number on that in the middle of the week. I still said I still kind of like it in like the 22 and a half ballpark, just because the total is so low. And once you get above 21 and a half, it's as long as you get above 21 and a half, above the 3 touchdowns, I mean, I think it's probably still fine. I think it's for me, I think it's the strongest play on the board at the number that I got at 24, but in the 20s, I think is still probably good enough. It is in the 22 ballpark right now. I think that's where it is. Michigan has dropped a little bit, so I was able to get the best number on that. Michigan's got 68% of tickets, but 65% of the cash on them. So they indeed do look like the public team there, and that game is in Indianapolis, which I forgot to mention. I mentioned where all the other games are, but that's, of course, a neutral site game in the Big Ten Championship. They're playing at the Colts Stadium there, Lucas Oil Stadium, so it is in a dome. So I would like it a little bit better if Iowa was getting to play on some like outdoor field in the cold. Keep that game like really low scoring and defensive battle, but I still think that Michigan, like, they've already got one eye looking ahead to the football playoff. I think at this point, if you assume that Georgia's going to win, I think Michigan almost I think they almost feel like they're like locked into the 2 spot at this point, and they're kind of already looking at, we're about to play Washington here. And of course, they're coming off their monster win against Ohio State. So that's really the handicap there. I think the game matters less to Michigan than the 2 games surrounding it. And they kind of just want to get in and get out of this game with a win and it doesn't really matter if they cover the spread or not. Style points, I don't think are going to do anything to them at this point. And there's no style points in a game against defense like Iowa. Like, I just don't think that's going to happen, that's the case there. So I think they don't want to get people injured. They know they're facing a really good defense here. So, that's the way that I feel about that. It's kind of a get in, get out, where you have this game surrounded by 2 bigger games, assuming that you are going to get into the college football playoff, which I think is a fair assumption to make with Michigan. College basketball, I got 2 plays today, and there are a few situations that I at least kind of eyed here that I kind of looked at. Like, Miami is coming off. Well, they're coming off like their first loss of the season, which is kind of one of those games. They lost to Kentucky, which Kentucky's a good team, but that's still one of those games where I think you get like a reality check, and it can kind of hang you over a little bit in the next game. Now they're playing against Notre Dame. Miami's gone down in that one from 16 to 14 with 81% of the tickets and 67% of the cash. So it does look like there is movement there on the Notre Dame side, a cash discrepancy there. So that's the way I would lean there slightly, just because I think Miami is kind of in that hangover where they just lost their undefeatedness, even though, of course, you don't expect to go undefeated in college basketball. But that was a tough game for Miami. I would probably like the fate of Miami better if they played Kentucky tougher, actually, but they lost pretty badly. I think that could still send you into kind of like a hangover type of spot there. Yeah. The game that I was alluding to a little while ago, I think it's a trap, is Marquette, Wisconsin. And Marquette has actually gone up from a 1.5 to a 3-point favorite. I believe this is in Madison at Wisconsin. 84% of the tickets on Marquette, but 71% of the cash. So Marquette, man, they're ranked 3 in the country or something like that. They're certainly getting the public action there, a little bit less of the cash than the tickets. So it looks like the market discrepancy is indicating on Wisconsin there. Wisconsin probably has some of the bigger bets there, and I think it looks like a trap. The line might be headed north of 3.5. I'm tempted to play Wisconsin here, to be honest, because you got the third-ranked team in the country playing an unranked team, and that doesn't really actually tell you the whole story here. Like, I think Marquette is not as good as the third best team in basketball. I think they're probably a top 10 team. They're not a top 5, I would say, that in my opinion right now, at least. And Wisconsin, even though they're not ranked, I think they're probably worthy of being ranked. I think they're probably somewhere as a top 25 team right now, even though they haven't been good in recent years. But I think Wisconsin's a little bit better this year than what we think. So I definitely lean to Wisconsin there. And the number really just looks like a trap. The odds makers are telling you that this is a little bit closer of a matchup than it appears, just eyeballing it and looking at the rankings. Marquette, I think, is overvalued while Wisconsin's undervalued there. Wisconsin might step it up because they've had to play like second fiddle. They've played little brother in the Milwaukee or the Wisconsin area. They've played little brother to Marquette for years now because Marquette's been so good recently. Wisconsin has been kind of down. So Wisconsin, I think, kind of has that in-state little brother aspect going for them as well. So I do like Wisconsin in that one as a fairly strong lean. And again, it looks like a trap. It just looks too easy to take Marquette there. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I do also kind of like the fate of St. Joe's because they're coming off that big game against Villanova, that huge upset win, but they have had some time off, and now they're playing in the Big 5 Classic, which is a Philadelphia tournament between all the Philadelphia teams, Drexel, Villanova, Penn, LaSalle, St. Joe's, and Temple are all playing in that tournament. They're all Philadelphia-based schools, I believe. So that kind of, because it's that tournament going on, I think it kind of removes some of the letdown aspect for St. Joe's, because it's like, well, you just came off a monster win and a huge upset, a massive effort, massive victory. So they're still in a letdown spot. I still do lean to Temple there. I just can't quite get there with a bet on it because now you're entering this like tournament, and that can kind of like add some motivation a little bit there. Whereas if it was just kind of just a regular season, regular game in the middle of the season there, I would like Temple a little bit more. Even so, I think Temple, because they've been down recently, I think they are still playing like the little brother role there in Philadelphia against St. Joe's. So I do still lean that way to Temple. They're getting 5 points. I don't really see the percentages on that. And that game is at the Philadelphia 76ers arena, I believe, Wells Fargo Center. So it's neutral site, even though these are all Philadelphia teams. So it's not at Temple's home court, but I lean slightly to Temple there. But KenPom has the line a little bit higher than the 5 at like 6. That's another thing that keeps me off of it just a little bit. But I think St. Joe's, overall, it's still kind of a letdown-ish spot for St. Joe's. It's just unfortunate that it's not a little bit of a better spot to fade them there. And then what else we got? That might be all I was looking at there. Well, and then we're going to get into I have 2 plays in college basketball. I thought I might have more. I do also lean Rutgers a little bit just because that's another one of those, where one of those situations where the line is in opposition to where the rankings are. You got Illinois at Rutgers. Illinois is the ranked team, but they're barely in the top 25. Rutgers is unranked. Rutgers is a pretty good, like, slow-paced team that can kind of frustrate opponents, and that's what they've been doing in recent years. They've been pretty good and kind of like tournament bubble area. Like they've been on the bubble to make the tournament the last couple of seasons. I think they probably should have made it, I think, last year, but didn't. Rutgers is up from a pick 'em to a 1.5. 80% of the tickets are on Illinois, but 76% of the cash. So it looks like there's reverse line movement on Rutgers in that one. So that's the way I would look in that one, just because it's that ranking versus what the actual odds are discrepancy, where the odds makers are telling you that even though Illinois is better than Rutgers, it's not a significant difference between how good those two teams are. Is that all I wanted to comment on in college basketball? I got to try to hurry this up here. I don't have that many plays today, so let's do it. First play. We're going to take Florida State, man. We're fading North Carolina. I think this is a sandwich for North Carolina, and it's a good bounce back spot for Florida State after I went against Florida State in their previous game. North Carolina is down from a 13 to a 12 with juice. What did I actually take with Florida State? I took 12.5. Yeah, so I mean, that's about where the line is there. With North Carolina, it does look like they have 59% of the cash on them, but 50% of the tickets. So I don't know about that, where it looks like the cash discrepancy on pregame here is telling you that it's on North Carolina a little bit. I'm not sure that I quite buy into that, because the line has gone down a little bit on North Carolina, and the situation is just what I'm looking at here. I think this is a bad situation for North Carolina here. I think it's a sandwich spot looking at this. And North Carolina also is the ranked team here, whereas Florida State is, of course, unranked. North Carolina is certainly the better team here, but North Carolina just played back-to-back games, or they played 3 straight big games. They played Villanova in the battle for Atlantis down there and lost that one by 2. Then they beat Arkansas, which I think was also in that tournament in the Bahamas. They beat Arkansas, who was a ranked team at the time, another pretty big win. Then they came home to Chapel Hill off of that Atlantis tournament, and they smacked Tennessee, and they scored 100 points against Tennessee. Although North Carolina's defense did not play very well in that game, winding up giving up 92 points, although you could say maybe they took their foot off the gas a little bit, because North Carolina was way ahead in that game. They were absolutely blowing out Tennessee, and Tennessee made it look a lot closer at the end than that game actually was. But North Carolina, they got to be in they got to be feeling really high and mighty off of that game against Tennessee. A huge win at home. You just scored 100 points, man, in college basketball. You're coming off that, and now you have Florida State, who's, yeah, I mean, they're in your conference, but they haven't really been that name team recently. They haven't been as good in recent years. They're not as good this year either. Certainly, they're the worst team. They're getting double digits here, but North Carolina coming off just such a massive win in that run of games there. And up next in 3 days, they host UConn, the returning champs, and a top 4 ranked team again this year. They got UConn, then they got Kentucky after that, after a little bit of a break, and then Oklahoma, who's also ranked. All those teams are ranked. So this is a sandwich spot. This is the down spot in the schedule for North Carolina here. They look too good, putting up 100 points against a Tennessee team who was ranked 10th at the time. Tennessee, I think, is a pretty good team as well. Florida State's coming in. I think you could overlook that, and you have the national champs on deck in a few days. I think it's a bad spot for North Carolina, even though I think they are a very good team. And even in their rankings, I think they're actually underrated a little bit. And Florida State's not as good as maybe even people think they are based on the name. I don't think Florida State's that good, but Ken Palm's got this at 13. I think 12.5 is fine. In a situation like this, you're not fading the Ken Palm number by a significant amount there. It's a huge sandwich for North Carolina. And what's Florida State coming off of? Well, we know, because I was on Georgia against Florida State there. That was a really bad spot. That was a sandwich spot for Florida State, because they were coming off beating a ranked Colorado team. They had Georgia coming in, who is a team that probably nobody's paying much attention to, not really known as a basketball entity. This isn't college football. And then they had North Carolina this game on deck, a much bigger game as well. So I think they overlooked Georgia. And in that game, as I mentioned, Florida State was way ahead with 7 minutes left. They were up double digits. They're up 15, and they completely let the entire thing slip. And Georgia actually won outright right at the end with a nice jumper with 1.5 seconds left on the clock. That was crazy. Good for me because I had Georgia and I had a little bit on the money line in that one too. But if you're Florida State, that's pretty embarrassing. You just lost that game. It's a big favorite, 9.5-point favorite. I think you were looking ahead to this game. I think it was a sandwich spot for Florida State as well. This is a much better spot for them. This is a bounce back spot. I think they're going to come focused. I like Florida State plus 12.5. That's what I'm doing in that one. I think it's a sandwich spot, like I said. And then the other play I'm going to be on is going to be fading Bellarmine. I'm on Ball State in this one, even though Ball State does have the better record than Bellarmine. So people might look at that and think that, you might say it looks too easy to take Ball State getting less than just home court because the odds makers are telling you that Bellarmine is actually the better team, even though they have the worst record. They've definitely faced the tougher schedule, but this is all about the spot, man. I don't think the betting public is really going to be getting involved in this game, really, even though it looks too easy to take Ball State, maybe because they're a team with a winning record and Bellarmine is not. Ball State looks like they're continuing to climb. I got in at -1.5 on Ball State. They've gone up from 1 to 2 now as a home favorite. I don't see the percentages on this, but this is another scheduling spot that I like. Bellarmine, they're playing a third straight road game, and they played 2 big conference teams in a row. One of them was the game I was on against West Virginia, which I thought was a bad spot for West Virginia because they were coming off a near miss against Virginia, which was a huge game for West Virginia. You play a tough, slow down physical defense like Virginia, a good team, and you almost beat them. West Virginia, I think, was not totally focused on Bellarmine, even though it was on their home court coming back home. I think they probably thought it was going to be a little bit easier than it was. And Bellarmine played tough and hung around deep into the game against them and wound up covering and only losing by 4. And then Bellarmine had a second straight road game at Louisville, even though Louisville is not the name basketball quantity they were in the Rick Pitino years and whatever. It's still Louisville, and you're still a Bellarmine team who's in the Atlantic Sun, and you were playing on the road against an ACC team, and Bellarmine stepped up again for that one as a pretty substantial underdog, and they came within the number again and played pretty well against Louisville. Now you're playing a third straight road game coming off those 2 big games that you were neck and neck with both of those big teams late into those games. And now you got a third straight road game and you're playing a MAC team in Ball State. I think it's a bad spot. I think Bellarmine could run out of gas here, even though, like I said, their 2-6 record is not really indicative of the strength of the team because they played Washington, Kansas State, West Virginia, and Louisville, and that's 4 of their losses. But even so, playing those big games and putting in a huge effort in those games, that's going to catch up to you at some point. And I think it might here, even though Ball State has faced a much weaker schedule here. I think it's a much better spot for Ball State. And Ball State is undefeated at home, even though they haven't really played anybody that good at home yet. They lost both of their losses were on the road, and one of them was their last game against Arkansas Little Rock, and they lost that game by almost 30 points, man. So that's an embarrassing loss for Ball State. You're in a bounce back spot. You want to get a win here after you lost so badly. That's embarrassing, man. They're going to want to turn it around. I think they're in a bounce back spot of that, whereas Bellarmine, they're playing a third straight road game. It's been a really tough stretch, step-up game after step-up game. There are multiple step-up games in a row where they did step up and played really well. Back-to-back near misses. Now I think they're in a bad spot where I think they just run out of steam. I like Ball State in the bounce back spot coming off that really ugly game there that they just had against Little Rock. Ken Palm, I think, has the game at around 1. So it's not that far off from the number. So that's that play. Those are the 2 college basketball plays. Ball State -1.5 and Florida State +12.5. Bad spots there. Looking around otherwise, Arizona, I think they're in a bad spot, but they're laying probably way too many points. But they are kind of in a sandwich as they just beat Michigan State in a big game. Although they are still trying to maintain their undefeated status. But they got Colgate, who's a pretty good team. Colgate's been a good team in the Patriot Conference for a while now. But Arizona's laying probably 20-something, around 20 points in this game, something like that. But they're coming off Michigan State, and they got Wisconsin, and then Purdue, Alabama, FAU all next. So I think it is kind of a bad spot for Arizona there. But I just can't really get involved when they're laying that many points. Kentucky, I think, is probably in a letdown spot if you're pounding Miami. So they got UNC Wilmington coming into their house. Another game with a really big line there. I don't think I really want to have anything to do with that. But I do think it's a letdown spot for Kentucky there. I don't know what else there is to even look at here. NC Central and South Carolina Upstate is kind of a weird situation where they both just played the same opponent in Coastal Carolina, and NC Central blasted Coastal Carolina, and South Carolina Upstate lost to Coastal Carolina. And that was, for each of them, that was their previous game. So people might look at that and think, well, if North Carolina Central can destroy Coastal Carolina, who beat South Carolina Upstate, then excuse me, North Carolina Central, of course, is going to beat South Carolina Upstate, right? So I would kind of look the other way a little bit in that one and look towards South Carolina Upstate. I think they're getting about 3 in that game. So that's kind of the way I would look there, just slightly, a little bit there. But I can't get there with any of these other games, man. I don't think. What else is there? Not a whole lot else going on here, I don't think. We can switch over to the other. And I do think Cal, like that game looks a little bit weird. Cal is certainly not that good a team, and they're coming off kind of a tough game against San Diego State, who were the runner-up team last year. They were in the championship last year, so Cal almost might even have that little brother effect going on against San Diego State, because San Diego State's been so good recently. And they lost a tough game there. They got Butler up next, who's kind of a name team in the Big East, been playing really well. And between those, they have a WCC opponent. Excuse me, in Santa Clara coming in. Looks like kind of a weird spot, even though Cal does need to turn it around. Santa Clara is actually favored at Cal. So the odds makers are telling you Santa Clara is actually better than Cal, even though Cal's a Pac-12 team. Santa Clara is in that weaker conference, but Santa Clara is one of the better teams in that conference. So I don't know. That's a weird one. Like, is Cal going to like still have that little brother effect again going on in that one? I don't know. It's a little bit of a weird spot there. Like, seeing Santa Clara as a favorite at Cal is a little odd. And then I don't know, man. And then possibly FAU. Well, the other thing about Illinois is, FAU I think is kind of in a sandwich spot as well, because they are, I forget, who does FAU have next? They're coming off like a blowout win, I think. And then they got some other big team next. Yeah, they got Illinois next as a ranked team, and they blew out Liberty, who's a pretty good team in their conference. So they could be in a little bit of a sandwich there. But the thing I forgot to mention about the Illinois Rutgers game is that Illinois does have FAU and then Tennessee on deck. So they could potentially look past Rutgers, but it is still, I believe it's their first Big Ten game, so maybe they won't totally overlook them. So that's why I'm off that. A lot of college basketball that we're talking about here. Let's go into NBA next. I got one play in the NBA. Even though it's a big card in the NBA, there are a lot of conflicting spots here. One thing I will say is that I lean to the Kings, but the line's getting out of control, and it just looks weird to me with Nuggets Kings. The Nuggets played last night. They beat Phoenix. They've played a really tough slew of games. Like, they're on a back-to-back. I think they're on a third game in 4 and a fourth in 6. They've been playing like a packed schedule recently. So I think that's why the line is where it is. And I think Jamal Murray didn't play last night. He might possibly be injured here. And Nuggets got a big win over the Suns last night. So I would look to the Kings in that one. It's just the number is kind of like keeping me in check a little bit on that one. And the Kings are coming off that bad performance against the Clippers where they got blown out. But that was, of course, after they beat the Timberwolves, returned home, beat the Warriors in the return home, in that ridiculous game where they were losing by a ton and somehow came all the way back. And then I thought they were in a bad spot because of that against the Clippers. I think they kind of just ran out of the energy there because they had come back from a really long road trip, had beaten Minnesota to finish the road trip, somehow made that epic comeback against the Warriors. And then I think they just had nothing left against the Clippers. So now I think you turn around and they're in a good spot now against the Nuggets, who are in a back-to-back, whereas the Kings are the rested team. But I think that's all kind of factoring into the line here. And it's gone a little too crazy with the Kings up from 3 to 4.5 at home, 80% of the cash on them, but 69% of the tickets. So I think some of the money is still on the Kings there, some of the bigger money driving the Kings up. But I just don't think I can just I can't quite get there at the number getting that out of control. We don't know about the Murray situation. It's kind of a double Murray situation because the Kings Murray might be coming back and the Nuggets Murray might still be out. Jamal Murray might still be out. There are just a lot of things going on in that game where I just can't quite get involved there. The game that but I do lean to the Kings because the Nuggets just are in such a bad rest spot and maybe in kind of a letdown spot of a big win over the Suns too. And that was in the game where Murray was out. So that was kind of the reverse injured player theory game for the Nuggets as well. And the Suns, I think, were at the point where they're actually favored over the Nuggets because of that too. But this line is just running away a little bit, even though I think the Kings are in a rested, like, bounce back spot there. And if it was closer to like a pick 'em line or below 2, I think I would be on the Kings in that one. The game I am on is taking a home underdog in the Dallas Mavericks, even though they are on a back-to-back. I think it's still a good spot to take the Mavericks here, and the market looks like it's in agreement with me, although the Thunder look like they've gone up from 3.5 to 4, and yeah, I'm getting involved fading the Thunder again, and it has not worked out for me a couple of times this year, but the spot is it's calling to me, man. The market is calling to me and the situation's calling to me. Thunder have 64% of the tickets on them, but 80% of the cash right now. Looks like it's on Dallas, on the home underdog Dallas Mavericks there, even though I think I don't know if those numbers are quite right there because the number has gone up on the Thunder, but I do certainly think that the Thunder are the public team because everybody likes what they've been seeing out of the Thunder. They've been winning a lot of games. And what did they do last? They absolutely crushed LeBron's Lakers by 23 points. That was a huge win for them, man, a couple days ago. And they're coming off a tough stretch of games where they lost by 3 to Philadelphia. They had to go out to Minnesota and they lost by 4, sorry. And then they lost by 3 at Minnesota. And then they played the LA Lakers. So 3 tough games in a row, and all of that since, November 25th. So they had a couple days off mixed in there, but still 3 straight, like, pretty big games in a row. And now you just crushed the Lakers at home, and now you go back out on the road to face Dallas. And even though Dallas is in a back-to-back, I think Dallas is going to be in an angry mood, whereas Oklahoma City's maybe riding that high and looking too good off of absolutely crushing the LA Lakers, who everybody knows that the Lakers are good. And the Mavericks, I think, are kind of flying under the radar a little bit because they've lost 4 of their last 6 games, even though one of their wins was against the Lakers as well. It was a close one. And their only other win in that stretch is against Houston, but they played pretty good teams in that stretch, losing to the Bucks, not by that much, losing to the Kings, which maybe was in a tough spot there. I might have been on the Kings in that. I think I don't even remember if I was or not, but that was a tough game against Milwaukee. And then they had the Lakers up next. Then they lost pretty badly to the Clippers, bounced back after the bad loss, beating Houston. And then what did they do? They had 2 days off before they played last night. So I think the rest spot isn't that bad, even though it's a back-to-back. They had 2 days off prior to that game they played last night. And last night, they just really didn't play well, man. They did not show up last night. They lost to Memphis by double digits. That's an ugly loss, man, to a Memphis team that has not been playing well. Bad, ugly loss. And Doncic actually did not play last night for the Dallas Mavericks. I don't know what his injury situation is, but let me look. Maybe they rested him because it was a back-to-back last night? Because I think he was supposed to play. What does it say? So he didn't play in that game last night. I don't know if he's playing tonight. Oh, it was because his daughter was born. So that's why. So Doncic didn't play that game. Luka was out last night. So that also factored into why Dallas lost badly to Memphis. That's an ugly looking loss. So Doncic, I would expect he's got to be back for this game, right? I don't know, but because I think he was there, for the birth of his daughter. Let's see, is he coming back? I'm not even sure, but his daughter was one. That was his first game that he has missed. So I kind of expect him to be back there tonight. I think he's going to be in the lineup. I think the line kind of seems to be indicating that maybe he isn't, but I don't know, man. But that was it was very unexpected that he was going to be out for that game, and Dallas just did not play well. So I think Dallas is in a bounce back spot here. The market looks good to me on the Dallas Mavs there. I like it. I'm on the Dallas Mavericks +4 at home. Thunder are coming off just a monster blowout win over the Lakers. I think, stock is about as high as it can be on the Thunder, and it's low on the Mavericks after people saw what they did in their last game. But again, it was without Luka. Congratulations to him, by the way, becoming a father. So that is awesome. That's a big deal. But come back and play in this game for me, man. Let's go. Even though that would be like a reverse injured player theory type of situation potentially. But the injured player theory is obviously not coming into effect in that other game because the Mavs got blown out, kind of. They lost by double digits. So what can you do there? Moving on to hockey. I only have one play in hockey as well, I believe. Do I? I was close to having one other play in hockey, but yeah, I do only have one. Let's see here. So I was close to playing Vegas. I'll just throw that out there. Vegas is returning from a road trip that took them to Western Canada. They lost 2 of 3, but they finished the road trip with a big win over the Vancouver Canucks. So I think it's a return home spot and kind of a letdown type of spot for Vegas there a little bit, but they do have a team with a good record, Washington, coming in. So that might mitigate that aspect a little bit, but I do think it's a bad spot. Return home distraction spot where they're up in Canada. Even though they weren't really moving around time zones that much. I think one time zone difference there. Only 3 games as well, but they finished with a big win over the Canucks, who have been playing really well. So that was a pretty big win for Vegas. Now they're coming back home. They're down from minus 230 to minus 185 on the money line. So the line has moved fairly significantly. They got 94% of the cash, it looks like, but 85% of the tickets. Not sure how much stock I put into that. You can tell that they're the public team. Now, Vegas is certainly the public team there, so I would look to go against them. It's a bad spot for them. Yeah, definitely not a good spot. And then Washington, on the other hand, but they're in the middle of a road trip, and this is going to be their 4th straight game on the road trip. But they didn't play particularly well in their previous game, even though they came out of there with a win against the Ducks. The Ducks have really been spiraling recently, but that game was kind of sandwiched in there for Washington between the LA Kings and this game against Vegas. That was kind of a bad spot there for them. I think they might be more, and it was a back-to-back for them, so I don't even know how they got out of there with a win and a third game in 4. This is going to be a 4th game in 6 for them, all in different cities, so it is still kind of a tough spot for Washington, so that kind of keeps me off of it a little bit. Slightly against Vegas, though, in the return home spot and the letdown spot there, but it's a little bit of a bad rest situation and travel spot for Washington there as well, which is why I can't quite get there with it. The game that I'm actually on is going to be on St. Louis on the Blues. I'm fading the Arizona Coyotes, who are down from minus 128 to minus 124 as a small home favorite there. Both of these teams have pretty similar records. It looks like Arizona's got 87% of the tickets, but 97% of the cash. Not totally sure I buy the discrepancy there either. I think, again, it's just kind of telling you they're probably a little bit of the public team there, even though these teams do have similar records, and St. Louis is just ahead of them in the standings right now in the division. The reason for doing this, though, this is a letdown spot for Arizona, man. I'm not sure what they're really going to have left in the tank after this, because 2 days ago they beat the Colorado Avalanche in overtime, and they've had 3 since the 25th. They've had 3 big wins in a row, 3 big games in a row. They won at Vegas, shutting them out, which I think that might have been a bad spot for Vegas. I think I might have been on Arizona in that one. I can't remember. But I think Vegas wasn't a bad – yeah, Vegas was returning home from a long road trip there and finished that road trip by beating the Stars, which was a big win there. So I'm pretty sure I faded Vegas in that spot. That was a bad spot, and they got blanked by Arizona. Then they beat Tampa Bay, which is also not anything to scoff at. That another fairly big win there, really, because Tampa is a pretty good team, and they just got Vasilevsky back. And I think Vasilevsky probably played in that game. I'm not totally sure about that, but he's been back for a little while now. No, he did not. It was still Johansson, but even so, big win, pretty big win there. And then, not yesterday, 2 days ago, Thursday, they beat the Colorado Avalanche in overtime. Colorado, one of the best teams in hockey. Huge win there for Arizona. I think they're in a letdown spot now, man. And they do have Washington next. I don't know if that's much of a look ahead. Washington has been playing well, but St. Louis is a team in your division, but I still think this has got to be a major letdown spot after that huge win over the Avs in overtime. Now you're coming and you're facing St. Louis. Yeah, I just think it's got to be a letdown spot. St. Louis won their last game, and that was a bad spot for the Sabres. As I had mentioned, I was on St. Louis in that one. Buffalo was coming off a big win over the Rangers, I think, in that one. So Buffalo was in a bad spot, in my opinion, in that one. And it was a 3rd straight road game for Buffalo there. And they had looked too good, just absolutely blowing out the Rangers. But that was a bad spot for the Rangers. So St. Louis beat Buffalo, but they didn't actually play that well, really. 6-4 win, so definitely not the greatest game. And St. Louis, even though, they do have Vegas up next, I think the fact that now they're starting a road trip, even though they did win their last home game against Buffalo, it's just kind of a ho-hum type of game there where you gave up 4 goals. You didn't play that well in the game, and Buffalo is not really that good of a team. So uh, I don't think it's like a letdown spot or anything like that. And I don't know if there's going to be that much of a look ahead to the back-to-back, the home and home that you have coming up against Vegas. You're heading out on the road. Like I said, you have Arizona right behind you in the division, so it is a divisional matchup. So I think that will cause them to have focus on this, as well as it being their first game to start the road trip here. I think it's a better spot for St. Louis to show up focused because of that than it is for Arizona. So I like it. And I think the market looks like it's a little bit in agreement with me. I see a little bit of reverse line movement there, ticking down on the St. Louis Blues there, and I think that's going to do it, man. And Arizona, I don't know who the goaltenders are going to be here because both of the team's top goaltenders played in the previous game. So Binnington played for St. Louis, and he didn't do that well. It looks like he is slated to start this game too, which I think maybe is a positive because even though they won that game, he didn't play that well. So maybe it's a kind of a bounce back for Binnington. He's a better goalie than what he looked like in that last game for sure. So I do think that he is probably playing in this game. And then Arizona, it looks like they're scheduled to have Ingram start again. And they've won most of their games with Ingram playing. He's been their better goalie out of the two of them. So that would be a positive for Arizona, I think, if he's in there. But even so, but he's played a bunch of games in a row. So I'm not totally sure that that's going to be the case because Arizona is, for a while, they were like swapping goaltenders, but Ingram has played the last 5 games now. So I don't know if maybe they're just going with Ingram now unless they're on a back-to-back or something like that because he's played a lot of games now. Vejmelka has been they just haven't fared well. Even though Vejmelka hasn't been that bad himself, they've just lost all of their games. If he's in net, they haven't won a game with him starting since October 21st, and they're 2-8 with Vejmelka as the starting goalie. So that's just kind of crazy to think about it because his numbers aren't that much worse than Ingram's. So that would be weird. So if he's back in there, that might be a bit of a negative for Arizona. I don't know if that's going to be the case because it does look like Ingram is scheduled to start, but it's not confirmed yet. So I don't know about that. All I know is Arizona's in a letdown spot. So I've got St. Louis Blues at a little bit of an underdog price at plus 108. I'm on the Blues plus 108. I'm on the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA at plus 4. In college basketball, Ball State minus 1.5, Florida State plus 12.5. And then my 2 college football plays. You can go watch the video that I have for college football championship week for more detailed analysis there. But I have Oklahoma State plus 15 and Iowa plus 24. That's going to do it for me, man. I'm Toad. Enjoy this huge slate of games today, man. College basketball Saturday is really in full swing now. And typically I'm going to have like about 4 plays every college football Saturday. But today it's a little bit limited. I'm still being picky there. Let's enjoy these games, man. Let's get it done. Let's keep this winning going. I got 6 plays today, so hopefully the bulk of it hopefully keeps me on the right side of it. But I think if I go 3-3, it's going to be a loss. So there is a decent chance that I still take a loss here, especially with law of averages coming into play. I've been winning so often that who knows. But hopefully we do it, man. This is going to be fun. Let's keep the fun going. Let's keep the winning going. Enjoy. Peace out.